Hello, everybody. This is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Part 3, Chapter 8. Towards the end of May, when everything was beginning to improve, she received her husband's reply to the complaints about her domestic tribulations. He wrote asking pardon because he had not remembered everything and promised to come just as soon as he could. This had not yet come to pass, and at the end of June, Darya Alexandrovna was still living alone in the country. On Sunday, during the fast of St. Peter, Darya Alexandrovna took all her children to the Holy Communion. In her intimate philosophical discussions with her sister, her mother, or her friends, she sometimes surprised them by the breadth of her views on religious subjects. She had gone through strange religious metempsychoses, and had come out into a faith which had very little in common with ecclesiastical dogmas. Yet Dolly herself conformed strictly to all the obligations of the Church, and obliged her family to do the same. She not only wished to let her example tell, but she felt it as a need of her soul. And now she was blaming herself because her children had not been to communion since the beginning of the year, and she resolved to accomplish this duty. For several days she had been deciding what the children should wear, and now their dresses were arranged, all clean and in order. Flutings and flounces were added, new buttons were put on, and ribbons were gathered in knots. Only Tanya's dress, which had been entrusted to the English governess, was a source of anger to Dolly. The English governess, sewing it over again, put the seams across the shoulders in the wrong place, made the sleeves too short, and spoiled the whole garment. Tanya was a sight to see, so badly did the dress fit her. Fortunately, it occurred to Matryona Filimonovna to go to set gores into the waist and to put on a collar. The harm was repaired, but they narrowly escaped a quarrel with the English governess. All was now in readiness, and about 10 o'clock in the morning, for that was the hour that the priest had set for the communion, the children, radiant with joy, were gathered on the steps before the two-seated droshky, waiting for their mother. Thanks to Matryona Filimonovna's watchful care, in place of the restive horse, the Prikashchik stallion had been harnessed to the droshky. Darya Alexandrovna appeared in a white muslin and got into the carriage. She had taken considerable pains with her toilet and had dressed with care and emotion. In former times she had liked to dress well for the sake of being handsome and attractive, but as she got along in life she lost her taste for affairs of the toilet, because it made her realize how her beauty had faded. But today she once more took especial pains to improve her personal appearance. But she did not dress for her own sake or to enhance her beauty, but so that, as mother of these lovely children, she might not spoil the impression of the whole scene. And as she cast a final glance at the mirror, she was satisfied with herself. She was beautiful, not beautiful in the same way as once she liked to be at the ball, but by reason of the purpose which inspired her. There was no one at church except the muzhiks and the household servants, but she noticed, or thought she noticed, the attention that she and her children attracted as they went along. The children were handsome in their nicely trimmed dresses, and still more charming in their behavior. Little Alosha, to be sure, was not absolutely satisfactory. He kept turning round and trying to look at the tails of his little coat, but nevertheless he was wonderfully pretty. Tanya behaved like a little lady, and looked after the younger ones. But Lily, the smallest, was fascinating in her naive delight at everything that she saw. And it was hard not to smile when, after she had received the communion, she cried out, "Please, some more." After they got home, the children felt the consciousness that something solemn had taken place, and were very quiet and subdued. All went well into the house, till at lunch Grisha began to whistle, and, what was worse than all, refused to obey the English governess, and he was sent away without any tart. Darya Alexandrovna would not have allowed any punishment on such a day if she had been there, but she was obliged to uphold the governess and confirm her in depriving Grisha of the tart. This was a cloud on the general happiness. Grisha began to cry, saying that Nikolinka had also whistled, but they did not punish him, and that he was not crying about the tart. That was no account, but because they had not been fair to him. This was very disagreeable, and Darya Alexandrovna, after consultation with the English governess, decided to reason with Grisha and went to get him. But then, as she went through the hall, she saw a scene that brought such joy to her heart that the tears came to her eyes, and she herself forgave the culprit. The little fellow was sitting in the drawing-room by the bay window. Near him stood Tanya with a plate. Under the pretext of wanting some dessert for her dolls, she had asked the English governess to let her take her portion of the pie to the nursery. But instead of this, she had taken it to her brother. Grisha, still sobbing over the unfairness of his punishment, was eating the pie, and saying to his sister in the midst of his tears, "Take some too. We'll eat together." Tanya, full of sympathy for her brother, and with the sympathy of having done a generous action, was eating her part with tears in her eyes. When they saw their mother, they were scared, but they felt assured by the expression of her face that they were doing right. They ran to her, and with their mouths still full of pie, began to kiss her hands with their laughing lips, and their shining faces were stained with tears and jam. "Matyushki, my new white dress, Tanya, Grisha," exclaimed the mother, endeavoring to save her dress, but at the same time smiling at them with a happy, beatific smile. Afterwards, the new dresses were taken off, and the girls put on their frocks and the boys their old jackets, and the Linaika was brought out again, to the wrath of the prikishchik, whose stallion was put at the pole, and they started with joyful cries and shouts out after mushrooms and to have a bath. They soon filled a basket with mushrooms. Even Lily found one. Always before Miss Hull had been obliged to find them for her, but now she herself had a huge birch schliupik. And there was a universal cry of enthusiasm. "Lily has found a schliupik." Afterwards they came to the river, fastened the horses to the birch trees, and had their bath. The coachman, Terenti, leaving the animals to switch away the flies with their tails, stretched himself out on the grass in the shade of the birches and lighted his pipe and listened to the shouts and laughter of the children in the bathhouse. Although it was rather embarrassing to look after all these children and to keep them from mischief, though it was hard to remember and not mix up all the stockings, shoes, and trousers for so many different legs, and to untie, unbutton, and then fasten again so many strings and buttons. Still, Darya Alexandrovna always took a lively interest in the bathing, looking upon it as advantageous for the children, and never feeling happier than when engaged in this occupation. To fit the stockings of these plump little legs, to take them by the hand and dip their naked little bodies into the water, to hear their cries, now joyful, now terrified, to see these eyes shining with joy and excitement, these splashing cherubimchiks, was to hear a perfect delight. When the children were about half dressed, the peasant women in Sunday attire came along and stopped timidly at the bathhouse. Matryona Filimonovna hailed one of them in order to give her some of the shirts to dry that had fallen into the river, and Darya Alexandrovna talked with the babui. At first they laughed behind their hoods and did not understand her questions, but little by little their courage returned, and they quite won Darya Alexandrovna's heart by their sincere admiration of the children. "Ishtwe, ain't she lovely now? White as sugar," said one, pointing to Tanya and nodding her head. "Oh, but thin." "Yes, been sick." "Look you," said another, pointing to the youngest. "You don't take him in?" "No," said Darya Alexandrovna proudly. "He's only 3 months old." "You don't say." "And have you children?" "I had 4, 2 alive, boy and girl. I weaned the last before Lent." "How old is he?" "Da, 2nd year." "And do you nurse him long?" "It's our way, 3 springs." And then the Baba asked Darya Alexandrovna about her children and their illness. Where was her husband? Would she see him often? Darya Alexandrovna found the conversation with the babui so interesting that she did not want to say goodbye to them, and it was pleasant to her to see how evidently all these women looked with admiration, because she had so many and such lovely children. The babui made Darya Alexandrovna laugh and piqued Miss Hull because she was evidently the cause of their unaccountable laughter. One of the young women gazed with all her eyes at Miss Hull, who was dressing last, and when she put on the 3rd petticoat she could not restrain herself any longer, but burst out laughing. "Ishtwe, she put on one, and then she put on another, and she hasn't got them all on yet." And they all broke out into loud ha-has.